Hello and welcome to the Dragonfly Daily. I am your host, Mike, the product manager at Dragonfly. You can find me at Dragonfly Wizard on Twitter. Today's lesson, lesson 10, advanced image segmentation. So we're going to build on what we did in lessons 8 and 9 on ROI tools and ROI Painter. Those are the region of interest tools for labeling the different regions of materials or particles or whatever it is you're interested in your image. As always, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so that we know that you want to be continually notified of new webinar content and other new content that comes out on the Dragonfly channel on YouTube. If you're watching live, you may also want to go back and hit YouTube later and put a like on this video to let us know that this is the sort of content you want to see more of in the future. All right, so today's lesson, lesson 10, advanced image segmentation. We will be using Dragonfly 4.1 as always this week, and in all of lessons 6 through 10, we are building on the customizing Dragonfly lesson 6. So we're not using the precise out of the box experience of Dragonfly 4.1, but the customizations that I applied in lesson 6. If you apply those, then your Dragonfly, when you launch it, will look just like my Dragonfly, and you won't get lost in any orientation or how the different panels have been moved around. The content for today is advanced image segmentation. We'll be talking about mathematical morphology. This includes dilation, erosion, opening, closing, also smoothing. We're also going to look at how you can do dilation specifically with a threshold regulated or threshold gated dilation. I haven't seen that in other software, so that may be new to you. We're going to look at the process islands. We had a look at this once or twice in previous lessons, how you can remove or keep different clusters of pixels by how big the cluster is in voxel count or by rank. We will also look at binary operations, union, intersection, subtraction. These are common operations that you can apply on ROIs or regions of interest in your segmentation. We'll also look at how you can remove or keep intersections. You're going to see what I mean here. This is sometimes defined in the literature as morphological reconstruction. So if you read about it, you'll see it there. And we'll also, I don't know how that got in there. That shouldn't be there. Another typo in my agenda. We will look at labeling particles or grains or things on the surface based on what is accessible versus inaccessible. And then I think we'll also look at closing surface holes, which is something I call Shrinkwrap. So with that, let's dive right in. So this is going to be Dragonfly 4.1. I do need to tell you what data we're using for today. So let me pop over to Google. The data will be available as normal later today on the Dragonfly website. So if you go to ORS Dragonfly and you hit the Dragonfly landing page, over here on the right there is a tab or a drop down for Learn, and you'll find sample data sets. And the data sets will appear right here on the list. So all of the data sets from the previous lessons are available, and you'll find 2 new data sets here. One is called the brick data set, which comes from NIST Visible Cement. You'll see me load that in just a minute. Another is really, it's just noise, but it's a useful construct for illustrating some of the segmentation tools that I want to show today, some of the elementary operations. So you don't need that. You could make it on your own, but it could be handy and it won't be a very big download. Now, both of those will be available. One, as I said, is from the NIST Visible Cement data set. So if you wanted to look that up, probably find it even with my misspelling. So this is available on the NIST Visible Cement data set page. It's actually from the brick, and we'll look at it here in a minute. I think it's maybe this first one, and it's this data right here. I had a problem downloading it in my web browser. It looked like this, which is why I'm providing it online. If you know how to use tools like wget, then you can get this data directly and load it in Dragonfly. But you'll just be able to find it on the sample datasets page later today. Now let's go over to Dragonfly. In the Dragonfly, the first thing I'm going to do is import those data. I'm going to use this button over here on the right, the import object. I'm going to choose segmentation demo. This is the noise data that I'm talking about. So you'll see it's a 3D image channel of noise, and you'll also see it's 3 ROIs. And we'll see what those look like here in just a minute. Boom, boom, boom. Turn on the visibility. I'm also going to import the brick data set that I talked about. So we're going to look, I'm going to import both the overlay and the brick image channel itself. What I will do for now is I'm going to look at the elements, some of the elementary operations, some of the operations in this advanced segmentation tutorial. And then after we look at some of those elementary operations, we'll apply them in a workflow to process some of the porosity in this brick data set. All right, so what we have here is I've double clicked to go full screen. Remember, a middle mouse to drag and a left and right mouse drag, middle mouse drag to zoom, left and right drag to pan. Once you have all those keys and mouse buttons at your fingertips and you have the muscle memory, you'll be very efficient to work and you'll be very productive in Dragonfly. So what I have here is a data set that is pure noise, and I have 3 different ROIs. The red ROI is just a sphere. We're looking at the cross-section of a sphere here, which is a circle, and the other cross-sections, it's also a circle. We also have what I call the green face, which is just to say if I drag this all the way down to the bottom, this face is labeled in all green. And then I have some blue marks. So you see I have a blue sphere and another blue sphere and a couple of traces in 2D. And we're going to look at what those are for. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the highlight opacity for blue marks, select blue marks, drag the opacity up. That's going to help us see something here in a minute. Now, one of the things I said I was going to teach you about is mathematical morphology. So we'll get started. You will find all of dilation, erosion, opening, and closing. You will find all of this in any image processing textbook. So I'm not going to get buried in the details here, and you'll find this in most image processing, digital image processing applications. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the red sphere. The first thing I want to tell you about is a dilate. A dilate allows an ROI to grow. So what it precisely does is it takes every pixel that is not red, but happens to be touching a red, and it gets labeled red. So if I click the dilate while red is selected over here, you'll see it grow. I'm going to click the undo. So it grows out by 1 pixel or by a diameter of 3. It grows out in all directions if I'm using a 3D. I'm not going to talk about the shape of the kernel size very much today. I don't want to get buried in the details. So I can do a dilation. So all of the pixels that are not labeled but touching red become labeled. So if I change the kernel size and I do a dilate, it gets much bigger. So instead it has a diameter of 7 instead of a diameter of 3. I'm going to click undo again. Now we can do the same thing, erode. This will take of all the red pixels, any of the red pixels that are touching a non-red pixel will disappear. So it's kind of like an eroding island. So if I click erode, you can see the effect. And as before, if I have a larger kernel, the erode will make it even smaller. So these are tools, these erosion and dilation. I'm going to click undo. These erosion and dilation tools are something that can modulate the selected ROI. In Dragonfly, you can have it apply to all slices. This is all Z or all Z slices as a 2D operation, or you can have it apply in 3D. We're not going to get into the details of the difference or when you would use, but let's just say most of the time you want to be operating in 3D. Now, if we do the dilation and erosion and we look at it, if you have a data set that's not complete, you might want to see some of the behavior. So what I mean by not complete, I've got some holes in this blue ROI. So if I click the dilate now while blue is selected, you can see, oh wow, dilation actually not doesn't make it grow out, but of course all these pixels seem to get filled in. And so that should be clear from my definition. Any pixel that's not blue, that is touching a blue pixel, becomes labeled blue. So that means all the ones on the surface, but all the ones on the interior as well. Now, if I do an erosion in blue, then it looks like this. So I've eroded all the pixels. Everything that was not blue, but was touching a blue becomes erased. Now, that is erosion and dilation, but I want to show you a special feature of dilation in Dragonfly. If I turn on the define range checkbox and I set some intensity range, so some of my pixels are now labeled pink, so I'll turn off blue so you can see it. So I've got some pixels that are above a certain threshold, as we saw in ROI tools, and all of these pixels are labeled pink. With that selected, if I hit the dilate button, it will dilate, and it will only take pixels that are touching a blue and happen to be in that intensity threshold. So if I grow out, none of these pixels that are pink that are not pink will get labeled. So let's see, if I now click the dilate button, you'll see that it's grown out, but it hasn't grown in here. And so I could hit the, I'm going to undo, and I could choose a bigger dilation and hit dilate. And you see, wow, there's lots of dilation, but it's still quite holy. So you can dilate out into a high intensity range. That can be useful from time to time. So I'm going to click the undo button. Now, the next two features are opening and closing. These are a little more subtle, but with this example on screen, I think you'll be able to see what they're good for. So an opening, well, let's start with a closing. A closing is a dilation followed by an erosion. If you take the data set that's red and I choose an opening, you won't see much difference. I'll click undo. However, if you take this data set that's quite holy, the blue data set, and I do an opening, it's going to erode by 1. And so a lot of these pixels are going to disappear, and then it's going to dilate by 1. So let's see an opening. So all of these pixels that were touching a white pixel disappeared, and there was nothing left to grow back. And so you can see the effect. So look here, that opening made all of these thin, small structures disappear. Let me do this in 2D, because some of these are 2D structures. So these structures had a few more pixels together, and so they survived. So if I click the undo, you can see there were more than 1 or 2 pixels wide. So the opening is a good way of pruning out small and thin structures. Closing is the inverse. It does a dilation followed by an erosion. So if I do a closing, it dilates out. So if I do a closing, what you'll see is this sphere will stay mostly the same size, but a lot of the internals will be filled in. So it dilated out and then it eroded back, and so it fills in things. You'll also see that this got filled in as a result. So if I click the undo, so you see this got filled in, a couple of these pixels got filled in, so it closes in small holes on the surface or even small holes internally. That's the closing. A smoothing, I don't remember the details of the smoothing algorithm, but it does apply a 3D smoothing on the segmentation. So I could try a smoothing, and it fills in and smooths out some things. And of course, like the others, there is a kernel size you can choose. So I could do smoothing with, I don't want to go that big, but with a larger kernel size, and it does a good job of smoothing your segmentation. We will use that at least once in the content today. Now, what we're looking at here is I've got multiple ROIs because I wanted to show you some of the binary operations. So I've got this red ROI and this blue ROI. Now, if I take the red ROI and then I control click, so I've selected the red ROI and then I control click to select the blue ROI. Now I have 2 ROIs selected, one marked A, one marked B. As soon as I have 2 selected, down in the properties panel, you'll see Boolean operations. So I can do a union or an intersection. Now, these should be pretty obvious. If I take the union of these, I'm going to take the union, I'm going to tell it I want to put it in a new ROI. And I'm going to say union by clicking union. And it's going to say, okay, we're going to put that in a new ROI. We're going to call it, I'm going to actually, instead of calling it union, I'm going to call it result. And then I'm going to change the color to yellow. So I have good contrast. Let's do, yeah, that yellow is fine. So I have good contrast. I will choose this yellow with my other good color contrast with my other ROI. So I click OK. Now I have this. This is the union. So if I hide the red and the green, sorry, and the blue, you can see this is the union of the others. Let me bring this down here. So now if I put these visibilities back on, that was the union, but what if I select red and blue again and I ask for the intersection? And again, in this time, instead of putting a destination in a new ROI, I'll just say put it in result. It's going to overwrite result with whatever button I click. So in this case, intersection. So now if I look at the intersection, change the visibility, all we see is wherever the pixels were labeled both red and blue, now they are the intersection. So that's obvious enough. That can be quite useful. It can be used for masking and used for creating combinations of ROIs. So when we select red and blue, you see that there are, in addition to union intersection, there's also A minus B. So whichever one you select first is the A. So if I selected red and then control clicked on blue, I have A and B, and now I can do A minus B. Let's put it in result and A minus B. And now if we look at A minus B, so it's all of these yellow pixels, I'm going to increase the 2D opacity. So I'm going to select result and then drag this highlight. You can see that all of these red pixels persisted, and then all of the red pixels where there was no blue pixel persisted, but everywhere there was a blue, it got subtracted away. So that is a logical difference. That is the subtraction. So that's quite useful. Now, I also have labeled, as I mentioned, so I'm going to double click to go to my 4-view layout. I did mention that on this slice, I have painted all of the pixels. Suppose I was interested in removing any of the ROI of blue that happened to be touching this surface. So if you look at my screen here, you can see that I'm just touching these few pixels of this ROI right here. So if I were to select blue and then select green, and I said, let's do a keep intersected. I only want to keep the blue objects that happen to be touching at least 1 pixel of green, and I'll put that in my result. I do keep intersected. Now, if I turn off everything except yellow, you'll see that the only thing that was kept was anything that was touching. Did I do that right? Let's look once more time. I want to select blue and then select yellow. And oh, you know what? I accidentally put it in blue marks, didn't I? Let us undo the last change on blue marks, and let's try one more time. So I'm going to select blue and green, And now I'm going to tell it I want to put the result in result. That was the mistake I made before. And choose keep intersected. So it's going to take the intersection and it's going to put it in result. So now when we look here, we just have, am I confusing myself? Am I doing anything wrong? Maybe they're all touching in 3D. And the converse is true. So if I take blue and green and I say remove intersected and put it in result. So take blue and green and put it in result and do remove intersected, then now we'll see just the parts that were blue and everything that was touching that thing on the surface is now removed. So it extends in 3D, so it's anything that happens to be connected in any long path to whatever was on that surface object. So that is the remove intersected. So we're going to look today at differentiating pores that are accessible and pores that are inaccessible on a real data set, and we'll use that. So those are all the elementary operations that I want to show today. I can actually delete all of these and we can turn our attention to the brick. So this is the brick data set. So this is from the NIST visible cement. I'm just adjusting the brightness and contrast with a control and right mouse drags, just the window leveling as we've seen before. So in this data set, there are some pores. If I double click on any of these views, you'll see the pores. I'm also want to mention this comes from the visible cement data set at NIST. You can go to visiblecement.nist.gov to see this data. So we have these pores. Let's suppose we want to identify and segment the pores and we want to try and do some sort of quantification on the porosity or maybe the accessible porosity. So we're going to look at that. So the first thing I am going to do is I'm going to start by thresholding. So we looked at this in lesson 7, ROI tools. I'm going to look at the histogram here. I can see that there's 2 phases of the histogram. So you can see a peak here and a small peak here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this slider. I'm going to use a middle mouse scroll wheel to zoom in. And somewhere about right here, I'm going to say that this is the differentiation between the 2 peaks. That is the pore peak and the everything that is not pore, all of the matrix and the grains, etc. So you can see visually that it's mostly the pores that are labeled. I'm going to click add to new. It's going to take everything in this intensity window. It's going to put it in a new ROI. I'm going to click to turn off define range. So these are my low intensity pixels. Now this right now happens to include all of the pores, but it also includes the space out here. So what I would like to do next is I would like to do a mask because I want to get rid of some of these pixels on the edge where I have the beam hardening that's going to interfere with my interpretation of the segmentation. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a cylinder object. And we're going to see in a few minutes, there's actually 2 different ways I can compose a way of restricting my evaluation to just the shape of my data. I'm going to do it once by composing a mask made of different shape elements. But we'll also see at the end that there's a way to sort of shrink wrap the data and close the holes on the surface. We'll see what I mean when we get there. I'm going to go back to the main tab and I'm going to, oh, it's actually not on the main tab. I have it up here in shapes because I use it so much. So go back to the segment tab. Here on shapes, I'm going to ask to create a cylinder by clicking this button. I have a cylinder. I turn it on. I'm going to double click so I can, let's see, where did I create the cylinder? I didn't have anything selected when I did it. I'm going to select the image channel. So I did delete it just now. I'm going to select the image channel and click cylinder. And now when I turn it on, I can see the cylinder. It's really, really hard to see because it's purple right now. It's blue when I move my mouse over it. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to turn off the purple. All right, so here's my cylinder. I'm going to grab this vertex and move it to the top. I'm going to grab this vertex, move it to the bottom. I'm going to stretch it just beyond the range. And now over here, I'm going to double click in this view. Again, double click to go full screen, all four panels, and then double click on a single panel to zoom in. So I'm going to position this in about the center. I'm going to grab the radius and drag it out to about here because the beam hardening starts to take effect. Get that approximately centered. And so now I have a cylinder. If you use the cylinder as we saw in lesson 7, the shapes, then you could, of course, apply a visual clip on the outside and you see this is the difference right here. So look in this window, when I click this checkbox, you can see what's being masked out by the cylinder. Now, what I will do is I've got that cylinder. And what I can do is I can take my low intensity and I could say I want to apply a mask to my low intensity. So I could right click on cylinder and say I wish to mask the ROI. And what it's going to do is it's going to say which ROI, and I say low intensity and I click OK. And it takes everything that is outside of that cylinder and it gets removed from the ROI. So if you look here, you can see that everything outside the cylinder that was there has been removed. If I clicked low intensity and I did an undo, it would bring it right back the undo is only for the very last thing you did. So as soon as I do anything else to low intensity, I won't be able to recover that undo. So I've used the cylinder to mask this, but I also have this structure over here, which I would like to eliminate. I'm going to do that with a shape. In this case, it's going to be a box. So I'm going to turn on a box, and now we can see the box. I'm going to turn off the cylinder. I'm going to come in this view. I'm also going to turn off low intensity. Now, okay, this actually was not the right view. So double click. Let's put it in this view for a second. So what I'd like to do is position the box maybe over here. And we're going to remove, we do have some beam hardening over here. We basically want to remove all of our segmentation that's in this box. Now I'm going to look at it from the other angles. We could look at it from this view and say that we should tip the box a little bit this way. It doesn't matter too much. I do want this to extend beyond the top and bottom of the data set. So I've positioned the box. You can see it positioned in 3D. So that is what we want to do. And now I can take this box and I can right click, and instead of using mask, so we'll turn on this. Instead of using mask, I can right click and say I wish to remove from ROI. So I do remove from ROI. It says which ROI, and I say the low intensity. Now everything inside the box has been removed. So now my ROI is all of the pixels that were inside the cylinder and not inside the box. So I've used two shape elements. Now I want to show you a slightly different way of doing this. If I did have a new ROI that was the same shape as my data set, so I'm going to say as dataset brick, and let's say I call this my mask object, and I do click OK. What I can do is I can take cylinder and I can add it to an ROI. So I could add this to mask, okay? And then you see it's added everything in the cylinder, and then I could take box and I could, just as we did before, remove from ROI. So remove from ROI, which one? I will choose mask and click OK. So now I have this mask in 3D that is the shape of where all of my data are that I wish to interpret. We're going to come back to this and actually use this later. I'm going to turn off box. I don't need box or cylinder anymore. Well, I'll keep them around. Maybe I've forgotten and I will use them later. So we have done this segmentation. Now, if you zoom in, I'm going to change the color of this so we have a little higher contrast. I'm going to switch it from purple to yellow, and I'm going to turn up the intensity. So I select it, scroll down, find 2D opacity, and drag up the highlight. So I've got a lot of these pores, and I also have lots of individual pixels that are probably just noise. So you can always drag down the slider and sort of see what's being labeled. So you can see there are some real pores, and then see these speckles in here are probably noise. Now, the first thing I could do to clean that up is I could right-click on low intensity, and I can go to refine ROI, refine region of interest, process islands. We saw a little bit of this in some earlier lessons. I could say I want to remove anything that is, let's say, less than, I don't know, 15 pixels, and click OK. And it's going to remove little individual bits of noise that are not connected to a larger cluster. And so that's a good way of throwing away what you think is segmentation noise. If these long cracks are actually real, then they should be kept because they'll be longer in 3D than the 5 pixels. So I've done a pretty good job of cleaning that up. Now, we could continue. We could go with what we have. We could take this data set and do an opening. I think the opening would make these cracks disappear, and I think those cracks are actually real, so maybe we don't want to do that. We could also do a smoothing. So one question is, what we have here, is this real or is it an artifact? And if you look, there are some brighter pixels in there, but I think those are imaging artifacts. Hard to know because I don't know this system very well. If I wanted to fill those in, I could try a 3D hole fill. So let's go ahead and try that. Actually, before that, I'll just try the closing operation that we looked at before. So if I just take this back down, I'm just going to choose sphere, kernel size 3, and hit close. And we'll see if it closes in some of these holes. Give it a moment to operate. So I'm doing all of these operations on my laptop. This data set is 500 gigabytes. The low intensity ROI itself is not very large, but apparently the closing operation, it doesn't take a lot of megabytes, which is to say this is not very big on disk, but it is a little complicated. So it did close a lot of the holes. I would hit the undo to do a comparison so you could see, but that operation took like 25 seconds. I don't want to have to repeat it again. So yeah, so that is, well, actually, let's do this. Let's make a copy of this. And then on the copy, I will undo the operation. Will that work? Let's see. Turn on this, select this, choose undo. No, it doesn't work there. What if I do it on this copy, on the original, and I hit undo? Yeah, so you can see the difference. So you can see where it got closed in. That's a pretty good job. So I like the closing operation. So this is the one I smoothed. This is the one I've smoothed. This is the one that hasn't been closed. So I should relabel that. So this one is closed. And if you wanted to see the difference between closing and smoothing, we could take this one and run the smoothing operation on it and see how well it does. So that's going to take a minute to do as well. So this is just what you often end up doing is you start with a threshold and then you may clean it up. Now in week 4, when we talk about deep learning, we'll see ways that where you can avoid all of this just by training a deep learning model. But if you're not at the point where you need to use a deep learning model and you want to use the elementary operations, starting with thresholding and then cleaning up with geometries and shapes, and then cleaning up with smoothing and mathematical morphology operations. So here is what we see if we see the result of the smoothing. So it looks like this crack is still here. That's good. And we see a lot of this has been filled in. We can compare that to what we have here, which this is filled in even better on the, and it's kept the crack. So let's say we want to treat this as, it says closed. I'm sorry, I think I did a fill. So I'm going to mark it filled, and I'm going to mark this one, double click to change the name. I'm going to mark this smooth. Okay, so that's pretty good. So I have that, and I have a segmentation. Now, suppose I were interested in differentiating the accessible pores that are touching one of the faces of the object from the pores that are on the inside. That could be quite useful. Now, I have created this mask object, and what I can do is I can make a special version of the mask that is just the pixels along the top and along the edges, even if it's irregularly shaped. And if I have that object, then I can do what we saw before, this remove intersected or keep intersected. So that is the key to finding the difference between the accessible pores and the inaccessible pores. Now let me show you what I mean. I'm going to take this mask object, and I'm going to make a copy of it because I want to create a shell. So I have the entire mask, but now I want to know just the pixels that are along the surface. So I'll make a shell. The way I can do that is I can make a copy. So this is the make a duplicate. In the copy, I can actually, let me just click once to select it. I can do a 3D erosion. So if I do a 3D erosion, I'm going to use sphere kernel size 3 on mask and do an erosion. Now, I'm going to, as soon as the 3D erosion is done, I'm going to change the color so that we can see the difference between the mask and the eroded mask. I forgot, when I tried some of these operations, I was actually using a workstation with more compute power, and I forgot that when I do it on my laptop, I will have to wait a few seconds on some of these operations. Obviously, if you're working with much bigger data, you're going to have to wait a lot longer, unless you've got a lot of compute horsepower at your fingertips. Okay, so I've got mask and I've got mask copied, but I'm going to rename this mask eroded. So I take mask eroded and let's make it, I don't know, green. And okay, and we'll turn on the visibility. And if I zoom in, you'll see the difference between masked and mask eroded. There's mask goes everywhere. Mask eroded only goes up to the very final pixel on each face. So using a left, right to drag and a middle to zoom. So if now I take mask and mask eroded with a control click, I could do A minus B and put this in a new ROI. So A minus B with new selected. And I could call this my shell. So shell, and I don't really care what color it is. Blue is going to be fine. And now if I hide mask and I hide mask eroded and I look at shell, it's just 1 pixel thick. So I think you all see where this is going. If I take my low intensity pixels, which maybe right now I can just rename this all pores, and if I want, I can mark that it was filled. So I've got all pores. Now I can take all pores, select it, then do a control click on shell and say I want to do the remove intersected. If I remove all of the pores that are touching one of those faces, what I'll be left with are just the inaccessible pores. So if I click remove intersected and I call this inaccessible, and I give it some color I haven't used yet. I don't see any good colors. I'm just going to use bright green for now for my inaccessible pores and click OK. And we're going to, I don't know how long this is going to take on my laptop, but you know what's going to happen. It's going to take, oh, it's already done. So let's look at it. So these pores, which you see, are the ones that are not in any way connected to the pores on the surface. Now, I can repeat the operation. I could take, now you should know by now that there's two different ways to get what I want next. If I want the accessible pores, I could just take all pores and subtract out inaccessible just by selecting both and doing an A minus B. That would give me the accessible pores. Or alternatively, I could take all pores and select shell, and I could do keep intersected, and that will keep only the pores that are somehow connected to the surface. So if I do this with a keep intersected, and we'll click this button, and we will call these accessible pores, and we will put yet another color on here and click OK. Now, this is going to give me all of the accessible pores, so let's hide all of this. So here are the inaccessible pores in green. I'm going to select it, and whoops, I have to select it and then adjust the highlight. So those are the accessible pores, or the inaccessible pores rather, and here are the accessible. Wait, I don't see anything. What did I do? I selected all pores and then shell, and then I want to put it in accessible pores and keep intersected. Maybe I clicked the wrong buttons. Let's try it once more and put those all in accessible pores and view it. Okay, there we go. Just as expected. I don't remember what I clicked wrong, but I clearly wasn't paying attention. Try not to process Dragonfly while explaining to 150 people at the same time what you're doing. You may make mistakes. So here are all the accessible pores, here are all the inaccessible pores, and that's what we wanted. Now, if we're wanting to do some quantitative analysis, I can come down here under mask. Remember, that's all of this. If I come down under mask and I select and I come down into the property panel called statistical properties, and I say compare mask with accessible pores and do a refresh, it says 14% of the entire mask volume is accessible pores. And if you do inaccessible, it'll tell you it's 1%. If you do all pores, is that what we called it? Yeah, all pores, you'll find that the volume fraction is 15.77%. So of that 15.77%, some of it comes from orange, some of it comes from the green. So there's your porosity analysis, looking at volume fraction of all pores, volume fraction of accessible pores, and volume fraction of inaccessible pores. I know that's what a lot of people like to do, and so that's why we wanted to show that in this lesson. Now, we did this by using shapes. That's how we ended up making this mask. Now, you may have something that's even more irregularly shaped than this. So maybe you have a meteorite or just a pure rock sample, and you want to create something that uses most of your data and then wraps up the surface. Well, you couldn't do that with primitive shapes, but you could do that with sort of a Shrinkwrap tool. Now, I tried doing it on my laptop, and it ran for about 1.5 minutes, and then it said, sorry, Mike, you don't have enough memory on your laptop. So I can't do it on the full data set, but I could probably do it on a cropped version of the data set. Let's find out. I'm going to take this data set, and I'm going to well, let's pretend like we've got some crazy shaped data. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to just contrive a small, funny shaped data set, and I'm going to do that just by creating an ROI. So it's a bit complicated, but it's just to prove a point. I'm going to take this ROI, and I'm going to do 3D painting on it. And let's turn on 3D paintbrush. Looks good. Let's suppose I have this shape. Let's hope that's not too big to work with on my laptop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my image data, and I'm going to make a copy of this very quickly. Again, I'm just contriving a data set to show the Shrinkwrap feature. Now, if I take my ROI and I come down here and I say I wish to overwrite, use this selected ROI, the one called ROI 15, and overwrite my copy of brick where, whoops, actually I don't want to overwrite, I want to invert. Thank you for being patient. I know I'm kind of rushing through a lot of things here. So if I wish to overwrite all of these green pixels with the value 0, now that I think about this, I'm doing this kind of wrong. But suppose I wanted to shrink wrap this data set, all right? And I wanted to, because I couldn't, it'd be hard to use spheres and other primitives, but I wanted to differentiate surface accessible pores versus inaccessible pores. What I could do is I could take this data set, and if I were doing some thresholding on this, so if I took this data set and I did an upper Otsu and I had this, and now I added that to a new ROI, okay, And the way I would do a surface wrap on this, so I'm going to label this, rock matrix. And what I would do is I would look at the pore size of the biggest pore that I want to close on the surface, because you have to say, well, this is not a pore. I don't want to close that off, but this is. So you're really making a size differentiation of what's a pore and what's just a structural shape. So if you're still with me, I'm going to go back to the main tab. I'm going to click this ruler and I'm going to say, okay, here's an opening of about 30 microns. So if I would like to close all pores that are 30 microns, then it's going to end up closing this off. So that's just a casualty. So we have to decide what are we going to close and what are we not going to close. But I'm going to hide those. Sorry, delete those. I'm going to take the rock matrix, and here's what we can do. We can right click and we can go to, let's see, is it under refine region of interest, close holes smaller than, let's say we just choose 25 microns, and I'll see if I have enough compute power to do this on my laptop right now. So this is how you would sort of shrink wrap and close this surface, and let's see what it gave us. So it gave us this. So you can see that it closed these holes. It did treat this as a pore of 25 microns. This was actually exposed somewhere on the surface to something even bigger. So there are different ways and tricks you could try and fill in some of those. But that is the way you would build that, and that's the last topic in my agenda was the shrink wrap. Let's go back and look at my agenda. Wow, I don't know how many of you are still with me. This has been a super long lesson, but these are the tools. Once you know what these tools can do, then when you look at a new data set, and if you've had practice with these tools, you can figure out how to apply them in different ways to process your data. I hope this application, looking at the brick and using the thresholding and the mathematical morphology, such as smoothing and filling holes, removing islands, and using the shapes to prune the data, I hope this lesson showed you how to apply a bunch of these tools in one useful lesson. All right, thanks for your attention. Just a quick reminder, lesson 11 will be on Tuesday, not on Monday. So we're gonna take Monday off. Thanks for watching. If you're on YouTube, hit like on this video, and we will go on now and do just a few minutes. Maybe I'll go ahead and take 5 minutes of questions and answers. So I'm gonna pop up the Q&A. I think a lot of people left. We only have a few questions to answer. Oh, wait, more. Yeah. So question number 1, when defining the voxel size, Dragonfly doesn't accept 0.82 by 0.82 by 0.82. It only works if I use 1 by 1 by 1. I think you're importing the data and you're putting 1 by 1 in the wrong field. I think if you put it in the voxel size, you will actually be able to tell it 0.82 by 0.82. We use this all the time, so I know this is working. Question from Andrew, is it possible to delete pixels from the actual data as you're doing with the ROIs? We actually did that in the very last operation where I was trying to make that contrived example of an irregularly shaped rock. When I created the mask and I inverted the mask and I used overwrite, it actually overwrote the data, so it deleted those pixels. So I think that answers the question you're asking. Next question, are there Boolean operations such as XOR and NOT? Well, we don't have those. Maybe we should. Not, we do. So not is inverse. It doesn't appear on the binary operations panel. I suppose we could put it there. That might make it a little more obvious. But if you have an ROI selected and you come over to the segment tab and you look at ROI tools, there is invert. That is the same as a not. For XOR, I would have to think about it for a moment, but I guess we don't have it. Okay, Lars says he really likes the binary operations. Thanks for the feedback. Next question. For accessible labeling, was there a rolling ball algorithm? So I would have to check with my colleague Matthew on how we implemented the closed surface holes. It involves taking the inverse of your ROI and then doing a distance map, a distance transform, and then doing an erosion. It may be mathematically equivalent to the rolling ball algorithm. I would have to think about it and get a whiteboard out. So I'm not sure about the answer for that. Next question, how would you refine your shrink wrap? What are the tools you would use to close the holes you noted? Well, no, I don't think I have an answer for how would you close these holes, but not this. So, I mean, the shrink wrap is not perfect. And that's what I think you see here is that the shrink wrap gets this and it gets this, and you have to decide, is this a real pore? Is this a real pore? This is clearly a real pore. You could, in fact, take the difference between the shrink wrap and what you had before, and then take all of those and then sort them by size and say, if they're just 1 or 2 pixels on the surface, maybe I don't want to treat it as a real pore and as an artifact. That would get rid of those. And then maybe you could manually prune these. If you learned in the ROI Painter lesson in lesson 7, this point and click tool you could use to erase this cluster, for example. So you could manually prune it, and it might only take you 5 minutes to remove all those from the surface. That's a good idea. I should show that. What kind of RAM does my computer have? The one I'm showing. I am working on a laptop that I purchased in 2015. So it's a 5-year-old laptop that has 16 gigabytes of system memory and a 6 gigabyte graphics card. It was a $2,000 US laptop then. So it's probably what you would, the horsepower you would get if you spent maybe $1,000 or $1,200 today. So you say your computer continually crashes and you have small micro CT data sets that are less than 10 gigabytes. Well, you need a more powerful computer. So a lot of people buy computers for these days. What a lot of people's computers are used for are composing emails and editing manuscripts and using web apps. And those don't use demanding resources. So your laptop may be 100% perfect for all of those. But if you need to process data, then you obviously have to have enough memory. If your data set is 10 gigabytes, then I suggest you have 30 to 60 gigabytes of memory so that you have room in memory to make derivatives of your data and process. So this is not a 500 gigabyte data channel I imported. This is actually a 500 megabyte channel that I imported, and you see that I was able to process it. So I can point you in the right direction. You don't have to spend a ton on hardware. Like I said, you could spend the equivalent of $1,200 of today's money, or you could spend $2,000. My colleague bought a $2,000 laptop 1 month ago in February 2020, and it has 32 gigs of memory and a top tier graphics card with 6 gigabytes of memory, and it's got super fast storage, and it would easily process your data. So you don't have to invest very much. The computer you have right now is not suitable. So Sarah says, will we talk about distance maps? What are they mainly used for? I specifically added distance transforms to the what's next list, and I don't think anybody voted it up, so I haven't added it to the agenda. But I know you don't know if you want to hear it until you know what it's used for. Well, that's kind of a chicken or egg problem, so I'm not sure how we'll tackle that. So I can't answer right now what they're used for. I'd have to think about it. Next question. Looks like you guys have minimum requirements and GPU processing. Oh, Lars is just making a comment. Make sure you have the minimum requirements. And so if you are trying to use Dragonfly and you're not getting the performance you want, if you're on the website and you go to get Dragonfly, anytime you try and download the software, you can't access any of this information without this appearing on screen. Check the system requirements. If you ignore it, then you're going to miss out. But it does tell you what the requirements are. We tell you how much video memory we recommend, how much system memory we recommend. So it's a good start to look at the minimum requirements and then at the system recommendations. And the last comment is, what should be a minimum in terms of GPU cores? Well, let's just say this. If you scroll down on system requirements, if you get anything on this list, you're going to be doing awesome, and you'll have plenty of horsepower for visualizing and processing Dragonfly. And if you started the list, this is the best card you can get. Well, when I updated the list last, which was 12 months ago, but this is actually still the best card you can get. That'll change in 2 months when NVIDIA releases some new cards. So this is the best card you can get, and it costs thousands and thousands of dollars. And so if you can't afford it, you can go to the next card on the list and go all the way down. This card right here is like a $500 card. And so I'd highly recommend this. It's got great performance to price ratio. This is a fantastic card, and it costs $2,500. This has got the best, I think, price to performance ratio. If you make money for a new machine or a new hardware upgrade, I'd highly recommend this card. So, but there's no question on the minimum number of GPU cores. It just does say that for doing the 3D rendering, which is required in Dragonfly, you have to have a GPU, and somewhere in here, I think it'll tell you that it has to implement OpenGL 4.3 or higher. All right, I only have 2 more questions, so I'm going to take them, and then we're going to cut out, and everyone's going to enjoy their weekend. Oh, no, there's just one more question. AMD Radeon is not on the list. That is correct. So you will see this. It's not on the list of recommended GPUs because I don't keep up with all of the AMD platforms. There are some cards that are supported. Really, you can just look at the minimum requirements and see if your AMD Radeon card implements OpenGL 4.3 or higher, and you should be good to go. Note, if you do adopt an AMD card, you will not be able to use the deep learning. So here it tells you about the minimum requirements for Dragonfly. If you plan to use Dragonfly's deep learning solution, please visit, is your system ready for deep learning? This tells you what's required CPU-wise in either the AMD or Intel, and it tells you have to have an NVIDIA CUDA-capable card. Here's a list of those cards. So that tells you what you need to run Dragonfly. All right, thanks everyone for watching. If you're still tuned in, you must have really enjoyed the questions and answers, but go ahead and hit the like button and hit subscribe. Thanks everyone. Look, we'll see you next in the next lessons, which will be, starting with lesson 11, will be on image processing. So see you then. Everyone have a good weekend.